When we want to create or go or listen to the soul's calling, sometimes it's not about doing, but it is pausing to be with all facets of yourself, the happy, the sad, the angry, the ugly, and not judging when they come up.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Power in the Pause podcast. As a reminder, don't forget to hit subscribe so that you do not miss a single episode that comes out every week. And it would mean the world to me if you would please click and leave a 5-star rating. And even more happy for me is to leave a review so that more people can find this podcast. So thank you guys for joining me today. I am really excited about my conversation today with my friend and one of my mentors, Amber Hagberg. Hello, Amber. How are you?
Hi, Wendy. I'm good. I'm so excited to finally be here with you.
I know, me too. I'm so happy that you're going to be on my show today because you guys, we're going to talk about how Amber chose to listen to the whisper of her soul as it related to her life as well as her business. And it honestly, her story was so inspiring and was one of the reasons why I had to connect with her. So before we dive into our conversation today, I would like to share a little bit more with you about her. So Amber is a Costa Rica jungle mama, guiding others to share gifts, passions, skills, and life experiences into retreats and online businesses by creating wealth from the inside out. So Amber, welcome. Thank you for being here. I would love for you to share your story in how it relates to our topic today of answering the whispers of your soul.
Wow. Yeah. I feel like we could go so far back in just the little nudges of it's time to do something different. And those nudges being against what was normal. The first time I ever did this, I dropped out of college to sell everything I own, move across the country and study yoga. It was just this inner knowing that I had, even though I was crossing out all of the boxes in having a house, a car, going to school, doing all of the things I was told that was going to lead me to success, not knowing anything about where yoga was going to take me. And it took me to Colorado, which then I had this deep desire to move to Costa Rica and lead retreats. And I just sold everything I owned. And I had no idea how I was going to make it work. I had no idea how to market, to sell. I knew nothing about online marketing, nothing about business. I just sold everything I owned. And I was like, I can always go backwards. And so as I had these little whispers of like, do this, it was always against what I was told. And I was always so afraid. But as I started to listen, I started to build my confidence in trusting those tiny whispers. And the biggest whisper that I didn't listen to was staying in a relationship with a man. When I first met him in Colorado, I knew he wasn't for me. And yet I did it anyways. And I didn't just do it. I did it for 5 years. And it was like, not until I had a miscarriage and I lost a baby, I had to like listen. And when I listened, like my retreat business took off. I found the online entrepreneurial world. I traveled the world leading retreats, Bali, Australia, Morocco, and it was just like this reminder that when you feel something or you hear something, to listen. And it was that moment that like I didn't listen. When I did listen, I just started to float downstream and everything just started happening for me. And so many people in my world were like, wow, Amber, like you just took off after you left. And it's like, I wasn't listening. And it was just that moment now, like every time I get that whisper, do something different. I'm like, you and I talk about this a lot, Wendy. It was like, I had this in my business. It was like, you're no longer a self-love coach, Amber. Like that's where you were 5 years ago. And it was like, okay, now become a business mentor and a retreat leader and help other people lead. And I was like, no, that seems too edgy. It seems too scary. But it was like how to let go of something that was so successful and helped so many women to feel like I was leaving other people behind. But my soul was itching me. It was telling me something different. And that's really what has led me to be where I am here today. And every initiation is scary. And I don't know that it ever like doesn't not get scary because it's comfortable. And so the growth comes from being uncomfortable, from being unsure of how it's going to happen or what to do next, but to just take the next step of what you're being slowly pushed into. And if you don't listen, the universe soul just gets louder and louder until there is a catastrophic event that's like, I told you this, but you didn't listen. And the moment that we start listening, everything just falls into place.
It does. And your story, as you know, resonates so deeply. Me having pivoted, just a couple of months ago, and doing the same thing. And I know that a lot of people will always ask me this question. I'm sure you get it a lot too, but what did that whisper sound like, feel like for you? Because I know that so many people are like, well, how do I know if this is what the universe is nudging me to do? How can people who are listening right now really begin to practice this type of listening in their own life?
Yeah, it can come in many different ways. One, it can feel like you're working way too hard and nothing's happening. You're like, but I'm doing it all. It's not working. And you're like, oh, okay, check in. But it can also feel like I'm drained. I'm not inspired. I'm unhappy. I'm miserable. Like there was just every phase that I had to shift out of. It was like the first time I was just miserable and I was seeking happiness. And the next time I was like, where's my passion? Where's my purpose? And then the next time it was like, why isn't this working? And it felt like force. So it's a feeling that comes up in emotions where either it doesn't feel good or there's this desire in your heart, like, this is good, but I feel like there's something more. And it starts to lead into these questions like you go deep inside of your heart and your soul and you're like, what else is out there? There's something more for me. I just don't know what it is yet. So it's internalized questions. It's feelings of fear. It's feelings of sadness. It's when you are living your soul's purpose in the moment, you feel lit up and inspired. And like every single day is a gift and you're happy and you can't wait to get started and do what's next. And the opposite of that is like questioning for more, questioning what's next. How do I do something different? So really looking at how do you feel? And those feelings are going to guide you, but I didn't know what or how was going to come next. I just knew where I was in those moments of being spoken to, that it wasn't it. And that's like the uncomfortability is like, we don't exactly know what it is that's missing or what it is that's wrong or what it is that we desire fully. It's just that missing piece. I feel like it's this feeling of like something's missing or something's not working.
Yeah. And I love that, you're talking about how it can be positive emotions, it can be negative emotions, it can be a combination of both. Because I think that a lot of times people are waiting for like, it's like almost like you see like this, haloed creature coming down and with a wand and telling you exactly what it is, right? Like having that fairy godmother or, that fairy angel come down and bless you with permission, right? And I would love for you, if you wouldn't mind, to take us back to that point in time when you did make that move from Colorado to Costa Rica, and you did make that conscious choice that like enough was enough. This wasn't who you were. This wasn't aligned with what your passions truly were in life. And what would you say inspired you to take that leap and to move yourself away and that far and to sell all your things? Like, take us back. Like, what was your mindset around that time? And how did you push through what I have to imagine were some moments of like, what the heck am I doing?
Yeah, you gave me goosebumps. I would say that I sat in prayer a lot with my journal and I contemplated, and I also sat in it. I didn't make the move for 4 years. The seed was planted for 4 years. And I spent 4 years working and saving and envisioning and building really the confidence to finally do it. For me, I needed the safety in my heart, financial security. And so I worked 40 hours and then a part-time job. And I taught yoga classes on the side, like a whole nother lifetime ago. But it was investing in who I wanted to become without knowing how it was going to happen. And it was a lot of preparation, not just financially, but mentally and emotionally, and seeing the vision. And that's why I really believe in the power of the mind, where I saw myself here, but I didn't see how it was happening. I would journal about it. And I always say this, I remember lying on the kitchen floor with a pink notebook, move to Costa Rica and lead retreats. And I just kept envisioning that for 4 entire years. I came back here 2 or 3 times every year and would look up at home. While I was at home, I would look up different retreat centers. I would look up properties. I'd be like, oh, I want to buy this property. Like, I want to buy that property. And I would just get myself in the energy. And every time I went back to Costa Rica, I would reach out to retreat centers to go and teach there, to go and support them and get to know other people that were doing it. And the more that I got myself around expats and other people living in Costa Rica, I got to see that it was possible. And I did what I needed inside of myself to be like, okay, let's do this. And I left with one mantra in my mind: Amber, you can always go backwards. And it wasn't, I don't feel it was like the healthiest, because I was looking at it in a way of like, you're not going to succeed. Where when I was like in Bali, lying under the stars one night, I was like, Amber, when are you going to realize you're not going backwards? But at first, when we make these bigger leaps and there's no path of how we're going to do it or what's going to happen next, we need something for the nervous system to feel safe. It's an energetic feeling inside of our body. Like, how far can we stretch ourselves? Like, the first stretch was Iowa, cornfields. No one knew what vegan or vegetarian or yoga was, to move to Colorado. And that was a really big stretch because I was 19 years old. I knew nobody, and I didn't know anyone in my family that had ever left Iowa. So it was just like this new thing. And then from Colorado to a foreign country where like, I didn't know Spanish. I didn't know the language. Like, it was a big leap. And I also did have my partner at the time. So that was like another safety blanket, that when I chose to leave him, it was like, am I meant to be in Costa Rica? Like, without him, like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to make it work? Like, what happens from here? And so mentally preparing, emotionally preparing, financially, and being around people who have done it before is so valuable for making those bigger moves and leaps.
100%. And, what I come up, what I hear a lot, and I'm sure you hear this a lot too from your clients. And, I may have said this to you at one point as well within the last couple of months when I was really making the commitment to pivot. I think that so many times we think that starting over is almost like you have to just completely, to use the terms that I associate what I did with, it's like you think that you have to burn something completely down and blow it away and start from scratch, which so many times can feel so daunting. But what we don't realize is that it's not about burning it down and throwing away the ashes. The way that I describe it is it's really about taking the ashes, right, and allowing the phoenix to rise from it. So it's not, I think that people have this preconceived notion that it's like they just have to throw out everything and then bring in something totally new, and you need to be this new person, you need to have this new everything. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how it was that you tapped into like the skill set that you had. And like you said, you were working on your mindset, and how you did use that from, your quote unquote past, or what you call your backwards. How did you use that once you got to Costa Rica and really committed to starting this new life and business for yourself?
Yeah, it was choosing mantras instead of being like, you're going backwards, and focusing on like the security of that way. It was like, who am I becoming as I move forwards? And what embodiment do I need to be in order to claim that energy right now in this moment, and what decisions would she make knowing that she's only going forward. And it was really like shifting from the I want to I am. And I think that's a really powerful energy shift, is like claiming that identity, because something that I'm sure you believe in as well is like those desires of who we're becoming already exist. It's already something that's a part of us in this moment. And I think the edge is holding the void from being where we want to be and where we are now. And when we get to see, like, in a decade, how much we can grow, when we scale it down to like 3 months and a year, it seems so small, like we're getting nowhere. But when we look back and we zoom out, it's like, wow, we really do have the capacity to grow. And when we can see that, like, I am creating her in every single motion and movement that I do right now by the choices I make, by how I feel, by the thoughts, you start to do things that get you into the frequency of who you want to be, and making those choices from the time we wake up to the time we go to bed to really embody that energy and that frequency, rather than thinking like, okay, I'm moving forward, but I still can like lean into the backside. It's like, no, I'm waking up every day and I'm propelling myself forward and I'm in that frequency. And it's like, you just don't wake up and not do, because you desire it so much. And I think, like, for me, the one thing that has always led me is passion. I really follow like what makes me feel more alive. And if it doesn't make me happy, if it doesn't fulfill me now in the moment, that I don't do it. And that doesn't mean like we don't do hard workouts and it's not fun, but it's like, it's the hurt so good that we get to stretch into.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing you say a lot of is, what you've really embraced is, and with the name of what my podcast is, right, is like really embracing these moments of pause and reflection. And the embodiment piece also requires a pause. And I don't think a lot of people understand exactly that is required. They think embodiment and they think doing, but really embodiment to me is in the being, and it's really in like the pause. It's in the quiet where you reconnect with that part of yourself. And I know that so many people experience or come up against different barriers when you are, when you want to go into that place, because sometimes, silence can be uncomfortable for people, or they get into their head, right? Of like, when they're trying to meditate or they're doing yoga, let's say, and all of a sudden their mind takes over. What would you say to people when, sort of like these limiting beliefs come in these moments? Like, how can they leverage that power in the pause, like in those, quiet moments, to hear the whispers, to overcome those beliefs that are trickling in?
Yeah, we can really choose to feed the thoughts that support us. But I think it's an everyday process. It's not like one day you wake up and the stories are gone. It's you wake up and you notice which stories are feeding your decisions, and then consciously ask yourself, how can I shift those stories that aren't serving me? And it brings me back to say, like, being able to have like business besties, having friends, having mentors and other people to help you reframe those stories, because sometimes like it's some scars, it's generational, it's ancestral. And like, we have to do a lot more work. But I think what you said was super powerful, in that when we want to create or go or listen to the soul's calling, sometimes it's not about doing, but it is pausing to be with all facets of yourself, the happy, the sad, the angry, the ugly, and not judging when they come up, because it comes up for me and I realize, oh, that's a daddy wound. Oh, that's a mama. Oh, that's a trauma. Like, that's not actually yours. But like, if I stay busy, I don't get to go there. And when I pause, I feel, I cry, I move through it, and then I choose differently. So it's like, okay, what story am I feeding? And then how can I choose story while pausing to be sure and certain that that isn't something that's not mine, but something that I was given, something that I was traumatized through, something that I have learned that I need to unlearn, or that I just simply need to hold space for the little girl that went through something that now that's coming up and weaving in. And I know for me in my journey that I had a lot of daddy issues and the abandonment wound and wanting to be loved and wanting to be seen. And then the desire to grow and be more seen is like, oh, but what if you're rejected? And what if it doesn't work out? And what if they choose someone else? And so it's like, witness the thoughts that are being fed and then hold space for them while choosing other things. And there's nothing wrong with just being. Some days are meant to like literally just Netflix, cry with a friend, go to the river, eat chocolate, whatever your guilty pleasure is when you're feeling. But like, I think you did this so beautifully when you're like, hey, I'm not going to work for the month of August. And what came through you in that pause was so much more powerful than if we just kept going and moving forward. And sometimes we just want to work our way through it and do our way through it. And that's why, the power in the pause is so beautiful. And it even happens when we go through birth, right? Like the threshold of birth, we want to get to the other side. And that's all of the emotions as well. And you can manifest and breathe and try to feel all like the sacred energy of having a beautiful birth. But, sometimes it's painful and you can't ignore that it hurts. And so I think that we just can't ignore that we're human. As much as the soul is guiding us, we are human beings having this spiritual experience. And sometimes we want to surpass the bad, but it's part of it. And I try to get away from labeling good and bad, but just to journey through what I'm experiencing and to notice when I am feeding stories that aren't supporting me. And that's a conscious decision that really no one can get you out of but yourself. But friends, mentors, they can reframe it. And if it lands for you, you can borrow it.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I'm all about coming from a place of neutrality, right? It's not good or bad. It's not positive. It's not negative. It's just neutral. It just is. And I think so many times the desire to put a polarity on something, I believe, is our need to control, right? Needing to be in that doing. And it doesn't serve. And, something else that came up for me while you were talking was, I think people also have this misconception that like, you went through this and you're done and it's rainbows and unicorns for you every single day in Costa Rica, right? But you've come up against, shifts and new whispers that have been coming in since you've been in Costa Rica. And so what I would love for us to get real about in our not that we haven't been, but just to continue to get real about how it is that like, it's not like it's a one and done and then we're smooth sailing, that this is like like you had said, it's an ongoing practice. And how have you navigated those new whispers that have come in based on, you went from Colorado, you moved to Costa Rica. Since you've been in Costa Rica, you're also expanding your business. So how have you also been allowing yourself to listen to the new whispers coming in, but still not allow yourself to take that step back? Like, I want to be authentic in letting people know that like, this is something we do every single day with our own business and our own lives. It's the speed at which we're able to move through it gets faster, obviously, as we practice it. But like, talk a little bit about, since you've been in Costa Rica, how those additional whispers that have been coming in have guided you and what they've provided for you from an abundance perspective, in terms of family and business and financial, et cetera.
Yeah, it's an evolution. It doesn't stop. And one thing that has really I've grown into understanding for myself is when we go through something we thought we've already healed from or gone through before, it's not that we're not healed from it or we didn't do the work before. It's we're another onion layer deeper. So I love that you're like, let's go even deeper, because I literally just shared on my Instagram recently a reel that in my world, it went viral, right? Like viral for some people is millions and viral for others is thousands, but it got so many saves and shares and likes. And the reason is I was like, I had this mantra last year when I pivoted, my business was like, this isn't who you are anymore. You need to do something new. And when you show up online and you market and message one thing for 4 years, and then one day you wake up and you're like, that's not me. Of course, your audience will go with you and some won't, but it wasn't working like it used to because I was speaking and calling in a new client. And I still had clients, and it was very, very slow from my ambitious self and what I was used to. And so I had a mantra, and I would go into the shower and I would say, it's working, it's all working out. And I would sing it. And my husband would come in the room and he'd be like, hey, is everything okay? And I'm like, yeah, everything's great. But there would be some days I was just bawling on the bathroom floor, like, what am I doing? Like, is this what's meant for me? Like, what about my family? Like, what if my income doesn't ever go back up? Like, what? And I feared it. I literally feared it. But I had mentors to be like, Amber, like, there's evidence it's working. Like, you're planting the seeds. And then, I share this story with my clients a lot. A year and a half later, it's taking off, but it isn't just taking off today. It's been taking off since I've been planting the seeds. And so there are moments and parts and pieces of my life that I'm like, what's happening? What am I doing? Or even right now, we're in the midst of buying and building land. And I've already bought and sold a house from all of the money that I made in Colorado. We'll backtrack a moment. I spent 4 years working my life away to save to come to Costa Rica, thinking it was going to be like the land of the Pura Vida. I was going to be chill and relaxed. I didn't know how to stop working. So I started working, making more money than I did there, busier than I was there, until I woke up one day and someone's like, what do you do with all your money? And I was like, oh, I save it. It's in the bank. And so that moment really shook me because I remember that my dad was saving for retirement and he died. And I promised myself I wasn't going to relive that again. And then there I was, I took it with me and I was like, okay, I have to break up with that. And so I started living my life, but with that money, I put it all with a friend into a piece of land where we built and sold a house. And I had no idea it was going to work out. And I was afraid. I was like, that's all the money I've ever created in my whole life. And I didn't know what was going to happen, but I had a prayer. And I was just like, I hope my house sells before Amani's born so that I don't have to worry about money and I can just go into motherhood and be supported. And literally February 26th, my house sold and Amani was born on March 16th. And it was just like, you are so supported. You are so guided. And it was just like, there was no stress around needing to go back to work. It was I desire to show up in my business and come back. But I did it where he slept on my chest until he was 6 months old. And so I had the ability to create the freedom around the motherhood that I desired with my parents not being there as I wished. And so every iteration that I've grown into has come with challenges and fears and wondering if it's going to work out and desiring it now and wanting to know the answers. And the one thing that I can always go back to is I have a vision practice. I have a meditation and a feeling practice. I get into the rooms with other people that are doing it and expanding it. And the days that I feel sad, I let myself feel sad, but I don't live there. I experience it and then I choose to continue to let that propel and move me forward.
Yeah. And I think you said something really important too along the way is that you've leaned on community or other people or mentors along the way. I used to think that doing it by myself was such a strength and way to go, Wendy, and you can do this. You don't need anybody. You could, and it just made the journey so much harder. And it took so much longer versus when you allow yourself to lean in and say, I get to have support. I need support getting through this, whether that's, through a mentor or through a community of people, or even just, when you move to a new country and, you start networking and trying to meet new people, you had a baby. So as a mom, you're meeting new moms through your kid. There's all these different moments where what I'm hearing is that you kept seeing the value in connecting, whether that was with other people or with the land or with yourself, that it's really through, listening to the whispers is what is really deepening your connection with yourself that then propels your personal growth. It propels your ability to make decisions, quote unquote, more quickly. And really overall just improving your well-being. So can you talk a little bit about how you've noticed a shift in your own personal growth and well-being as a result of listening to, these moments, whether they be, positive or negative?
Yeah, I think what you said is so important because it really strengthens your ability to believe in yourself when you do it, and then you do it again, and then again. Every single time that you do it, you get stronger at it. And in that strength, you build more confidence. And that's what I was saying, moving from one place to the next, it was building the muscle. It's The ability to take those risks is a muscle, but also to listen to those whispers is a muscle. And then it just, like training, it gets easier and easier. The more that you train, the easier it gets. And that's what happens when we listen to our heart. And that's how we create these wild, extraordinary lives, is because we align with the soul frequency that's taking us somewhere. Like, depending on what you believe, you have a destiny, and what you do in your human vehicle, it's taking you there at a certain speed based upon the decisions that you make. And every time, I said, it's challenging, but you trust yourself more. You trust in your abilities. Like, I always said I would live in Costa Rica forever. And now I'm like, I don't know. I'm open to where I go, because I already know that I'm not really driving this vehicle as I am. It's like we're constantly like just being initiated into a new decision and a new path, and strengthening those muscles and practicing those skills, really being able to learn how to listen is so important.
Yeah. And what I'm also hearing you talk about is, it's really, you've perfected the art of the surrender, right? And leaning into and trusting the guidance and the surrender, which is so hard for so many people. I mean, me included. How is it that you have allowed yourself to, so I'm sure that there's people listening going, God, I try to do this. And like, sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't work. Like you even saying, I don't know if I'm going to be in Costa Rica forever, when this was like something so passionate that you were just, it moved literally and figuratively moved you. How can other people really lean into that surrender? What would you say is one piece of advice that you would tell them that they, like what's on the other side of that surrender that you can gift them with today?
There's no pathway to surrender. And I think the most magical thing about letting go is, on the other side, there is something more beautiful for you. But trusting that when you don't know that, and there's no guarantee, it can't happen until you make it. And I talk about this a lot in retreats. It's like, you don't know the magic of what's happening when you go on a retreat until you say yes and you go, and it's a portal. It's the same thing when we're going to manifest and create and listen to what the soul is guiding us to do and who we're becoming. It's who you become in the surrender, the being of the becoming through the transition. And it's hard because there is no like advice other than like, just imagine what it could be like and act as if it's happening. And when you let go, I think one of the most powerful things that I've been reminded recently is that there's angels and spirits and guides walking through you, and that you're not doing it alone. And when you do let go and you do surrender, there's someone there, something there greater than you that's going to catch you on the other side. And you're not going to fall, you're going to fly.
Yeah. And it always happens differently than we anticipate, right? I was having a conversation just earlier this morning with a client where I just kept saying, like, it's not going to look how you think. And that's because it's going to be so much better than you could ever imagine it happening. And I just got like full body chills, even just saying that, right?
Me too, because that's what I said. I was like, I moved to Costa Rica and I had this vision, and I spent 4 years envisioning it. And like, it looks nothing like I planned. It looks nothing like I envisioned. It's so much better.
Yeah. And I can't stress that enough to you guys listening today, is that it is always going to look so much more incredible than you could have ever imagined. And if you were to imagine it, it's just the tip of the iceberg of what is possible for you, of what it is that, your divine self is intended to receive in this particular life. And so, Amber, as we wrap our episode today, I would love to hear just the question that I'm hearing that I want to ask you is like, what would you tell your Colorado self now that you have learned that would help accelerate that process for her? Now, granted, I know you wouldn't be where you are had you not been through everything that you have been through, and I'm not trying to pull out of that, but like, what is something that you would tell your younger self today?
that you can do it, that it's possible to go for it, to trust yourself. And I do agree with everything you said. It's like I couldn't have achieved what I have without going through that. And yet I did. Like I did write like a letter to myself, like, you can go now, because I stayed for 4 years in security. I stayed in a relationship for 5 years out of like not being able to love myself enough. And the sooner that we go, the sooner that we get to where is way better than we can plan, predict, or imagine. But it's the initiation of us going for it. So if I could tell that little girl anything, it's like, listen to what's calling you, because your soul is guiding you and you are so supported. And really, you have no idea how good it's going to get.
Oh, I love that. Full body chills. It really is. It is true. I mean, and I can even attest to that. I mean, what I would tell myself, even from just a year ago, when I first got those seedlings of, it's time to pivot, Wendy, what I would tell myself is the same thing. It's like, stop staying in resistance. Like, it's going to be even better than you could have ever imagined. And Amber, thank you so much for being my guest, for being who you are in this world. And I want to make sure that everybody knows where they can find you. So please share that. And then I also know that you have a lovely special gift for all of our listeners.
Yes, amazing. Be sure to come say hi on Instagram at Amber Hagberg. And if there's something juicy out of this episode, screenshot it and tag us both on the gram. It'd be amazing to continue the conversation with you. Also check out the podcast, Amplified Impact. We have Wendy on there as well, a really amazing episode that you can go and listen to. And if you're desiring to bring all of yourself into your business and your life, I have a 4-part video series showing you exactly how you can take all of your passions and life experience and co-create with the universe and your soul a fully booked business where you get to attract soulmate dream clients. And that is inside of the Facebook group, the Amplified Impact Podcast.
I love it. Amber, thank you. I adore you. And I'm so grateful to have you on this journey with me and to also be learning as you are embarking on yours. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Wendy.
Of course. And everybody who tuned in today. Oh my God, what an amazing conversation. I always learn something new from every single episode and every guest that I have on. And I hope that you guys also found value in our conversation today, because you know that my goal with every single podcast episode is to empower you in your pauses in your life and to allow yourself to imagine the impossible, because what is on the other side is 1,000% possible for you guys. So thank you for tuning in today. Don't forget to check out Amber on Instagram and her social media, as well as her podcast. And again, Wendy Sterling, your host. Please feel free to connect with me on social media. My social media is Wendy Page Sterling. And you guys can also grab my free mini course. It's in the show notes. So don't forget to sign up and check that out. Would love to hear your feedback on that as well. Thank you guys for tuning in today. Sending you so much love and light as always. Mwah. Bye, everybody.